Okay. So we should try to work on this mining thing. I didn't realize the connection between mining and forest destruction.
Yeah.
I wonder, is the climate changing there enough in Guinea? I understand that in Brazil, the rainforest is under threat anyway, just because of the dryness. But of course, mostly I guess they're cutting it down for farming or ranching or things of that kind.
Yeah, but the fires, the forest fires in Africa, were on a grander scale than they were in Australia even this year.
Really?
That's generally known in the South Central Africa.
Yes. Okay. Well, I've done one talk show about forest fires 2 days ago. She's a specialist in forest fires. She recommends, she doesn't have many wonderful solutions, but she recommends controlled prescribed burning. And she says that we are already in a situation where we've got almost certainly have uncontrollable fires now. There was an effort to suppress forest fires. You remember seeing pictures of Smokey the Bear? Smokey the Bear was always trying to get us to make sure nothing got burnt in the forest. But apparently the native people always used to have controlled burns, and that is actually beneficial. Okay.
Monsieur Abdulrahman, je vous communique maintenant pour vous aviser que l'adresse de courriel pour les gens francophones au Québec est dans le dialogue, la boîte de dialogue, à côté ici de l'image. Vous pouvez contacter cet groupement qui s'appelle Alternative à l'adresse de courriel info.
Well, what more can we do to entertain him? I think I want to do something for him, but I don't know what to do.
That's all we can do for him. He's been put into contact with the Quebec Association.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell me what you're doing in France.
Well, I'm visiting, with Gabby, and she's politically active herself. So I'm going to various events with her. She's a candidate in the municipal election for the left formation called the Left Solidarity, Ecological, and Democratic Alliance. That's the municipal coalition that she's a candidate for. But when I went to the meeting of that association, it was like really poor, Meta. You wouldn't believe it. I asked them, how come you don't mention composting in the program? Because they had all sorts of details going on and on and on, in the program. And I said, like you're not mentioning composting because there's no compost collection here. So the leader of the formation, she just sort of dismissed it and said, oh, yes, yeah, favor composting, let's go on. As if it was a personal issue and had nothing to do with the municipal politics. They have no idea that the compost collection could be carried on a weekly basis. Next, I've asked Gabby to find out which associations in France would be concerned by the nuclear reactor operations and the dangers of nuclear waste contamination. So she's finding that information, and when she gives it to me, I will send it to you.
Good. Well, does she think there are many, or is it an issue there? I mean, it sounds to me like of all the countries in the world, the French are the most most committed to the atom.
Yes. She was telling me the story about one nuclear reactor that was scheduled to be shut down, and the workers there were protesting and wanted it to remain open. because they didn't want to lose their jobs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can find that everywhere, but I don't know. I think the French are the most nuclear country in terms of that get the highest amount of their nuclear their energy from nuclear power plants.
Yes.
And I don't think there have been many accidents there. Am I mistaken?
I think you're right there so far,
Uh-huh.
because nuclear reactors probably are relatively new.
Uh-huh.
The question is what they're doing with their nuclear waste.
Well, that's a good question. Is it a secret, or do they have plans that they're discussing publicly?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be much public information about that. And another related matter, is that the energy cost is very expensive here.
Well, that's because nuclear power is expensive. It's one of the most expensive forms of energy.
Yes, so
Yeah.
it's a handicap, rather than a solution, for social needs.
Well, it's a handicap, and yet the question is, how soon can we abolish the damn things? Because right now, it looks like it's going to be, it's going to be quite a while before we get enough, the power plant, renewable sources of energy that are not intermittent. I mean, that's the problem. How can you do away with the dependence on these things? And in Ontario, it would be very easy because we could buy power from Quebec. They have all this. They have a surplus, and a lot more than they need. And they'd love to sell it to us, so we could get along fine without our nuclear power plants. But not every country or region could.
I have two pieces of information.
Mm-hmm.
One is that Quebec is presently exporting electrical power to Boston at the rate of 3 cents a kilowatt hour, even though they're charging Quebec residents 7 cents a kilowatt hour.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows how much surplus they have.
Yeah.
And it's the largest electrical generating company in the world, Hydro-Quebec.
I've been trying mostly unsuccessfully for about 4 years now to get peace organizations and spiritual communities to understand what they have in common and work together. This idea seems to me to be one that really has a lot of potential with that, and it's called Bells for Peace. And the notion is that the Olympics are in Tokyo this year. This is the 75th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The idea is to have bells ringing around the world, if possible, at the moment that the bomb dropped. And what I'm undertaking here on Vancouver Island is to have every church bell a ring, including the cathedral in Victoria, where I live, not Vancouver Island, not Vancouver, and where the Queen worships when she comes here, as well as handbells or any other kind of devices at that moment. And at this stage of that campaign, very early, I have some progressive Anglicans on board, but I would appeal to anyone to whom this idea seems like a good one to contact me. You have my email, and let's see if we can draw attention. The part of this that is going to push the faith communities a little bit is that I not only want the bells to ring, I want from the pulpit or at educational events in churches during that week. That week should be Hiroshima Remembrance Week.
It's not August 6th.
Yes, August 6th and 9th were the times of the bombs. Yes, during that week, I want from the pulpit or educational events around nuclear weapons, nuclear power, and most significantly, that the standard justifications have no basis in truth for the bombing. I want to try to educate the religious community. That pretty ambitious goal, but everything's early in that. The second matter that relates to that very closely, and I will post this, is we have I'm the chapter coordinator for World Beyond War Victoria, and you're familiar with worldbeyondwar.org, I think.
With it a little.
And one of our members is an international diplomat for Mines Action Canada, and he has just sent back
Is that Yeshua Moser Punkswar?
Yes, it is indeed. Yeshua has just sent us back a petition by the Hiroshima survivors themselves, because that I'm seeking signatures for, because Yeshua is going to be involved in April in the periodic review of the nuclear ban treaty. Find out from it. He just sent us an email with this petition, because although we have something over 30 of the 50 nations required to ratify the treaty and bring it into law, this petition that the Hibashika themselves are circulating has only about 10,000 signatures, and he would like to have more to bring to that review in April.
Gabby has some information to communicate to you, Meta.
Please. Mm-hmm.
I found an association. I give the coordonnées,
The address, the website address.
to Abraham. He will send you this address.
Good, good. Is that one
No,
big,
it's a French organization in the territory of France only.
all over France, though?
Yeah, it's only, and it's also Greenpeace. You know Greenpeace?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Also against nuclear.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Law professor, and I was called out of retirement several times to go back and teach at other law schools. And I will, just for what it's worth, I will tell you that the law school there in Tuscaloosa is a wonderful progressive island in the middle of a very backward, hostile state. I enjoyed my time there very much before I finally retired for the fourth time. I'm a veteran of the 82nd Airborne Division, U.S. Army, and turned to nonviolence with the help of Joan Baez in 1969, and went on to represent conscientious objectors and work that way. You may know I spent 4 years. I've been Canadian for some amount of time now, and I spent 4 years writing Canada, the case for staying out of other people's wars, and spent about a year going to promote that. My work was with another kind of violence. I dealt with death penalty cases. I represented people who faced death, and I mentored other lawyers, and I opened a program at my law school, which was the only one in the U.S., to try to keep the state from killing people.
So anyway, let me pursue the question of how much opposition there is in France to nuclear power, or how much concern is there about safety issues. I know that after Fukushima, there was a worldwide sort of upswelling of opposition. And I think that the Germans actually decided that they would just plain give up nuclear power. But I haven't heard anything about what's going on in France.
Precisely, there is not much opposition in France. And
No.
as I mentioned, the one nuclear reactor plant that was due to be shut down was being opposed by the workers there who want to keep it going for the sake of their own jobs. So it's rather dismal here. But there's nonetheless those two coalitions which are available to work with.
Well, I worry about France a little bit because here I don't understand this yellow vest movement, but it sounds like both the yellow vests are not exactly climate change activists by any means. Is this any kind of real reflection of what public opinion is like in France, that they would rather keep on driving their cars as much as possible, or what?
No,
Can
that's not the case.
you give me your own interpretation of what it means?
It's just that people are very dependent here upon cars, and there's not an adequate public transportation system, and that's why people were upset that the burden of opposing the use of gasoline, as a means of locomotion, was being put on the burden of the individual drivers. So that's inspired the Yellow Vest movement. But they're not anti-ecological. They are favorable to ecological concerns. It's just that they don't like the way in which it's being done. Now there's a general protest against the government because of their cutbacks on the Social Security, old age pension reform, in which they're trying to reduce, to a later age.
Excuse me one second. I want to greet a newcomer, Paul W. And I'm guessing, I can't see your face, Paul, but I'm guessing it's Paul Werbos.
Paul Werbos, yes.
Paul Werbos, is it?
Yes.
Good. All right. Welcome.
What is the solution, really, to the nuclear energy proliferation in France and the reduction in nuclear energy in Germany? Is that it is rather convenient that in Sahara, if there was a solar panel farm of large proportions, but a relatively small proportion of the countries there, that could be installed, that would generate enough electricity for all of Europe. And it could just be fed into Europe, by cable, So, the feasibility of substituting for all means of electrical generation in Europe are easily available. Of course, it means that Europe would be dependent upon North Africa, which Europe doesn't like to do, of course. But the solution is obviously international, and that's what has to be pursued.
Well,
And,
yes, but now here Paul Werbos may have some knowledge that I lack, but what is haunting me a little bit is how dependent would that solution be on storage? Because even, the midnight, I'm sorry, but people still use electricity in France at midnight, and there is no sunshine in North Africa.
Yes, but each house can have a battery, a Tesla
Well,
battery.
yes. Now that once we get to having everybody buy their own battery, that might be perfectly sufficient. But how close are we to that? I don't know. Those things cost $5,000 or $10,000 a piece, don't they?
Well, it just depends on the production cycle. If it's produced, by a public of utility and in sufficient numbers, then that can be done, for a much less expensive rate. The only problem is the elements used to make batteries, like lithium, are in short supply in the world.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Paul Werbos, do you have any idea about this?
What about Sanders' claim? Could you really do what he says? Could you get to more than half renewable electricity in the U.S. in a mere 10 years? And if we could do it in 20 years, that would be good. And that means no nuclear, no fossil. Well, at least cut them in half anyway. Could you really do it affordably? And I thought to myself, it seemed impossible maybe 20 years ago, but technology changes. And there was a breakthrough story I learned about this past year, serious demonstrated breakthrough story on one particular type of renewable technology. It wasn't my favorite, but once they prove it works, you got to change your favorites. And I changed my favorites when I found out what they were doing. It's called Power Tower Concentrating Solar Power.
Mm-hmm.
I used to call it, these are the the Egyptian prayer mats. You look at it, and there's this big obelisk in the middle, and in the center is the all-seeing eye, for God's sake. And all around it are these things that look like worshipers, all these little reflectors sending light to the all-seeing eye at the top.
Mirrors. They're just mirrors, aren't they?
Yeah. Just little mirrors, and they send light up to the top of this obelisk. And I used to be very skeptical. I was skeptical when I read stories from the World Bank saying, this is going to cost 13 cents a kilowatt hour. That would double our electricity bills. No way we could afford it. So I looked at other things that still might be cheaper. But
This thing about the concentrating power from these mirrors, that has to take place in a place like out in the desert. I understand that there are realistic plans, or at least ideas, a proposal to put things like that in North Africa, because then they could give a lot of power to Europe. But now, if you had that, well, aren't you still going to be limited by the fact that the sunshine is intermittent, and the sunshine, unless you have a really powerful storage system, well, it's...
That was the story. That was the story. The story has changed.
Oh, all right.
The story has changed. I have to give credit not only to NSF for getting me technical information, but I've stayed in touch with the Solar Energy Research Consortium of Chile. And you might say, what the hell does Chile have to do with it? They don't have Donald Trump to tell them how to do it right. How could they possibly develop technology without the help of Donald Trump? But it turns out that Chile does have some pretty good engineers who scour the world in a very open-minded way. And they have the world's biggest mining industry. And they have the best desert in the world. And so it turns out they have power towers functioning in Chile, which demonstrate this brand new technology. You should not believe me. You guys, if you know this business, you shouldn't just believe it because I say so. So what I need to do is give you a link. And the best link I have this morning is a search term you can use in Google. Google News or regular Google. But Google News, you can look up the following search term. HELIOGEN. HELIOGEN. That's the name of a company which just got billions of dollars from Bill Gates, who evaluated their technology and said, oh my God, this is what will solve our problem. And in a way, he's right. I know about the technology Heliogen is using. There's a good, solid scientific basis for it. It's not one of these things where you dreamt up that you liked yourself, which is kind of what I think about SpaceX. Now, these guys have really solid science behind what they're doing. And people have shown me the science. I won't bore you with it now, but if you like, I'll go into technical detail. Heliogen has a new way of building solar farms. And the thing about their solar farms is it's not just electricity. There is also a thermal storage option, which has been tested and developed. The people in Chile are very good with the thermal storage option. Your guy Jacobson and Stanford, they probably know pretty well too. They say the thermal storage, which comes with this kind of solar power, that storage is much cheaper than batteries. The best batteries people were working on a couple of years ago, they were looking at batteries that would cost $200 for a kilowatt hour of storage. And these thermal storage systems will give you the same capability for $50. So the bottom line is...
Excuse me, but is this what they call molten salt? Is the storage system they have where they send the heat down into a pit full of molten salt, and that retains it for 20 hours or something? Is that what we're talking about here?
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
So when I say thermal storage, there are a lot of different materials that people have used in the real world in working projects, and there are other materials that they think are better that they're working on in research. There's a lot of competition for what is the best form of thermal storage. So the guys at Stanford said 5 years ago, yeah, we know how to do it for $50 a kilowatt hour. That's serious. But did the Stanford guys have the best technology? Now we're pushing my knowledge. And if I were going to really push it further, if I were still working for NSF, if people were interested, yes, there are like 10 varieties. They're competing people. And there are researchers in Chile who have studied. I've heard researchers from Chile. There's a research team in Chile which studies the different varieties of thermal storage. And I can't tell you which is the very best one. And I do know that molten salts are part of it, but they're different salts, they're different chemicals, they're different. But the point is it works.
Okay, so if we have storage right on site, then the problem of intermittency is not as big a deal.
That's right.
But storage is, I think, key to the whole argument. Would this storage, Paul, would it work for anything other than this concentrating solar power, which is these reflectors around a tower kind of thing? Would it work for any other system of generation, like wind or solar, regular solar power panels?
Okay, so the key idea is storage of high intensity heat. So I am not aware of it working for wind. I don't think it would work for wind. I would kind of forget it for wind.
Okay.
It certainly wouldn't work with photovoltaics. But there are two other forms of heat-based solar thermal power. And I used to be more enthusiastic about small-scale thermal systems, the dish-style solar thermal, and there's still reason to believe that that could be very, very useful. But the problem is they didn't get the research money to make it as efficient as it could be. And the other thing is it doesn't give you the economies of scale. The best evidence I have is it might be compatible with the solar thermal storage, it might not, and we don't really know. The technology hasn't been developed. So right now, the only one we're really sure of are the power towers. That's the only one we're really sure of.
Well, now, could that be, I mean, I've heard of people saying they want to put in some, in North Africa, some large concentrating solar plant things, and that they could really handle a lot of Europe's shortages that way. But how many other places in the world would this work in? Because you really have to have a place where the sun shines a lot, you don't have any clouds, you've got desert, you know, and then how many places like that are there where close enough to where you need the power? On the other hand, I guess maybe you could send it by direct current, you could send it farther, farther away.
So in Europe, in Europe, you've got a problem between people lost in the clouds and people stuck in the mud. There are people who think their local electricity sources will be good. They're not. There are people who want to go to Africa. The cost is too high and too risky. But there's a huge opportunity for 1,000-mile or 1,000-kilometer power lines, expanding the European grid in order to get solar power from places like Greece, Italy, and Spain. Greece, Italy, and Spain would be great places for this heliogen technology.
Excellent. Okay. Well, now
the other part of it, the work I'm doing with the churches here on Vancouver Island, is to have during that week, to declare that week Hiroshima Remembrance Week, and to have from the pulpit or at educational programs that week, programs about nuclear power, the nuclear threat, the international law, and the fact that the standard justifications for dropping those bombs do not hold any water at all. The second is a petition that I can get to you by the Hiroshima and Nagasaki victims themselves. The nuclear ban treaty is coming up for a review in April. And as you know, you may know, there are more than 30 of the 50 nations required to ratify the treaty and make it international law have signed on. This petition campaign is in support of that, and I have the links in English and in French. But there are only about 10,000 signatures right now. There's a member of my organization, Yeshua, who is a diplomat with Mines Action Canada, who will be at that review conference. I believe it's going to be in Geneva, I'm not sure. So I would like to help get signatures on that petition to him, and I will send the link to anyone who would like to have it. So
I'm very involved with the Green Party of Canada and the Green Party of Ontario. And if you know what's going on in Canada right now, we have this tremendous focus on the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs who are fighting the RCMP and an injunction by the Coastal GasLink pipeline people building an LNG pipeline through their traditional territory. Now, this is an enormous issue for Indigenous rights and title in this country, but it is directly tied. It is directly tied to energy questions. And I think that both of those now are starting to get national prominence in a way they didn't before our federal election. And what it could go, if we don't try to take charge of the message and the messaging, we might find that the big nuclear lobby group will be trying to push nuclear forward, because the recognition is really growing across this country that natural gas is a fossil fuel. It is not a transition fuel. So there's going to be a lot more focus on electricity and sources of electricity. And that's why I'm just saying right now, communications around the dangers of nuclear energy are absolutely vital. And that's why, of course, all this sort of detailed scientific information that's being provided by people like Paul, who really know, is absolutely mandatory, but the communication strategy is also exceedingly important. And I say you all need to look for people who are your natural allies.
So that's why we need to talk to each other.
That's
it's really
right.
Great to meet you.
That's right. And your natural allies right now, I can tell you in terms of politics, are the Green Party. And the Green Party is actually getting very, very positive public attention from progressives in Canada right now, because Elizabeth May has been standing up very, very strongly in support of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs. And as you know, she's also, the Green Party has a very firm anti-nuclear power stance.
So we are allies.
Yes.
We are allies. We should help each other.
Yes.
That's right. So I think because
Fiona,
also
Fiona, let's back up a little bit, because people who are not in Canada may not be aware of what the Wet'suwet'en controversy is. You need to actually brief us, them maybe, on
okay.
What's going on that they need to know about.
What's going on in northern British Columbia is that our federal government and the provincial government of British Columbia are basically in favor of increased liquid natural gas production in this country. And the new Democratic government in British Columbia wants to make his province a global leader in liquid natural gas production. There's a lot of fracking been going on, particularly in northern BC. And if you know anything about Canada, you understand that a lot of our natural resources actually are found in areas where the main residents of that area are Indigenous peoples.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of problems in this country because we have not properly sorted out questions of Indigenous land rights and title. And that is part of the problem here. So that
now, if people, let's say in other countries, want to do something to support your position, how would they get in touch with you? Can you maybe email each other? And some of these people may want to pursue this, and we can't go on too long with it. So
no, we can't. But all I'm saying is I've just put up my email, because our indigenous peoples are on the front lines when it comes to climate change, when it comes to finding environmentally positive solutions to dealing with climate. And for instance, it's no accident that quite a lot of new solar installations that are going up in Canada have actually been in the far north. And are coming into reserves, for example, and to indigenous communities in the far north.
that's interesting. Yeah.
So that they are very much our allies. For those of us who are climate change activists in Canada, our indigenous peoples in a way are leading the way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Abdurrahmani has been waiting a while now. He was with us for a while before 2 o'clock, and he's in Guinea, and I think he only speaks French. So I hope some of you can make out what he's going to be able to say.
I speak French, but it's not coming in clearly.
Oh, okay, good. See what you can do, Fiona, to help us.
The other gentleman.
If he speaks slowly, I can understand.
Yeah.
Et tout le monde aussi a besoin du monde pour changer. Donc, je suis très heureux de vous écouter et de rester avec. Allô? Hello?
Fiona, can you tell us what he's been saying?
It sounds like he has a sort of a manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to see that. I think we need to physically have that. We need to be able to read that.
Is it
Papier. Il faut lire.
Vous pouvez envoyer.
Can you send it to us?
Allô? Les documents?
Oui, le document.
Allô?
Allô?
Oui,
Linda.
thank you. Merci à vous aussi.
Okay. Now, I wonder if we could also greet George, because George, I think you are also from Africa, but you're living in Toronto now, right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Why don't you take a turn and tell us about your peace organization in Africa?
Thank you. Well, my name is George Wilobo, and I represent Great Lakes Peace Center. Now,
Yeah.
Great Lakes Peace Center derives its mandate from the SDG 16, SDG 3, SDG 4, and SDG 5. So this organization was formed in 2011 after people getting out from the internally displaced camps due to war, due to the rebel activity of allied democratic forces in the neighboring Congo. And the ADF is a Ugandan rebel movement that is operating till to date in the Congolese outskirts. And because of this war, it created a lot of insurgency. And after the aftermath of this insurgency, a few young people came together, including myself, with other volunteers, but headed by one of the biggest African young people, young influential people that is in the Rwenzori region by the names of Chibaba Farouk, and we formed this organization with the hope of trying to create harmony and also create dialogue within the communities, because this community, one, was also having insurgency of the war, and then also internally the civil war that is within the clans and the civil war that is within the the kingdoms also created an insurgency. So these insurgencies came with a lot of vulnerability for the community members. And when we came back together, we started implementing some of these, voluntarily implementing some of the activities that included at least the Peace Jam. Now, the Peace Jam right now in Uganda is becoming a big thing, whereby we...
excuse me, George. I'm not sure I understood the word. Peace Jam, like J-A-M?
Yes, please, the Peace Jam.
Like it's something that, it's the kind of thing that young people have when they make music together, or what?
No. Well, it's about the youth are trained with the livelihood skills to empower others. So, in other words, the youth are the hope for peace. So we go into schools, we go into young communities and create groups and train them on youth livelihood programs. For example, for the young girls, we have sewing machines that they are trained in. We have people that are trained on entrepreneurial skills, and they keep being active in entrepreneur-wise, and then also active economy-wise, so that they do not think of being recruited as rebels in the community, or being a nuisance in the community. So we are focused on mindset change for the youth, and we are partnering with the Makerere University Rotary Peace Center for implementation of these activities. Something that we are also doing as an effect of conflict, there was also a lot of teenage pregnancies, a lot of teenage marriages, which became rampant. So as the Great Lakes Peace Center, we established a vocational training center where some of these young girls that got pregnant at an early stage, they are given hope for the future by training them and skilling them, so that they can be able to also become valuable in the community. Now, when the community see some transformation in some of these people, they also start changing. We are also implementing some activities in climate actions, climate change.
And Charles is running a project on psychotrauma in Vukovar, Croatia, a city that is trying to recover from that terrible war. Sounds like you could share things with each other, and probably Charles has ideas for things that might be helpful. Am I right?
I have.
Absolutely. And we're also working a little bit in the Congo. And what we could do with you, George, would be to work with the traumatization of the people in your region and help them to help one another. That's what we do. If you have a look at our website, we have a program which we call Pragmatic Empowerment Training, PET, which we give online. And it's very participatory, and it's directed at the people. Now, for example, today, both yesterday and today, I had teaching and supervisory groups in 2 places in Congo. We've had groups in all kinds of places in the past online. We don't have the money to go there, but we do a lot of work online, and you might want to take a look at our website and see what we do. I'll explain it in a little more detail in a moment or two when Meta gives me the chance. But yeah, I really would like to get in touch with you, and it really would be good to talk.
Reminding George that I just put on the chat the email of one of my group who's been working in Uganda for the last 2 years, if he wants to contact him.
Most of the activities that we do are more into creating and giving hope to the communities, and giving them alternative ways of thinking, other than just thinking about war, other than thinking about civil unrest, because most of our people are highly traumatized. There is also this simple preventive health conditions like hepatitis B, for example. So some of these health diseases just requires sensitization. So we do these things, by the way, single-handedly without much support. The support that I'm talking about and partnerships that we are talking about here is just going to the sub-county or going to the local government to be able to notify them and give us technical people that can be able to come on the ground to the community, local community, to speak to the people. We have had focused groups and focused discussions with the local community, with the local leaders and stakeholders, because some of these community members listen so much to their religious leaders, the local council leaders, more than even the government top leaders. So we work together with the local leaders, then we can be between the local leaders and the government leaders, so that people can get an understanding of what the status quo and what the government is doing for them, for that matter. And then we are also providing alternative sources of energy, so that because this area of focus is surrounded by the national park, so there is a conflict of the people, the human settlements, also with the wildlife. So they go to the wild to gather the sources of energy, which is firewood, and firewood, which are trees that will have to protect the environment. So we have to, of course, talk to them also to sensitize them that, look, you are destroying the environment by doing what you're doing.
Before we started, this fellow, Dora Hamane, was speaking from Guinea, but one of the problems they have in his country is the mining industry. They have a beautiful, tropical rainforests in Guinea, and of course this is extremely valuable to the world. But the main threat against the rainforest there is the mining companies from China and the United States primarily. I asked whether there were any Canadian mining companies there, and he didn't think so. They're apparently mostly Chinese and American, but that this is destroying the rainforest. So your concern may have some relevance to his, and maybe you should be in touch with that too. Now I want to, and I think that Charles wants the floor again. Am I right, Charles?
First of all, George, I'm a physician, so maybe I could be of assistance to you in that sense as well. I'm head of something. I'm a volunteer, but for the last 25 years, I've been the head of something called the Coalition for Work with Psychotrauma and Peace. And what we do is we train what we call barefoot therapists, or peer supporters. In other words, we train people without previous education to assist one another with the psychological consequences of war and trauma. Now, at the moment, I'm living in a place called Vukovar, Croatia, which is an 8,000-year-old city that was one of the first cities involved in the wars of the 90s. And when I got here in 1995, the city was more or less completely destroyed. We have groups of people who work on war trauma. We work with migrants, we work with refugees. We try to train people, as I say, to be kind of peer counselors, to be barefoot therapists, that sort of thing. We do it online, so if you have a half-decent internet connection, and they aren't always. We had some problems the last couple of days with connections to the Congo, but we finally did the work. So if people are interested in this, please contact us. My email is on the chat. And the website of the organization also is on the chat. So you could see what we do and how we do it. It's very participatory. It goes to the issues that are very local, and we don't do it. It's very important that the people who are in the regions themselves who are there do the actual therapy, because that's less stigmatizing. It gets closer. It's far better for somebody from there to do it than for me as an expert from outside to do it. And that's what we do, basically.
I'll make sure that my guys back home will contact you in an email. They'll send you an email and they'll be able to give you more updates and details of the current status at home and what the needs are like. Then you can take it on from there with them, community.
Mm-hmm.
Well, from what you described with those
Yes.
girls who are so highly traumatized, I think we could train some of them to help other girls, and maybe we could make it
Yes.
a little something of a difference that
Yeah.
way.
Surely.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. I would love
Thank
to
you very
do
much.
that.
Good.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you all. Now let's see. Adam is my assistant, and he's been doing things like getting me cups of coffee. Adam is working for me, and will be doing a lot to publicize this event that we have coming up on April the 28th. And so, because I talk too much, I'd like to share the microphone with Adam. And Adam, can you explain? I think none of you have heard my little pitch, because some of you may want to join in on the April the 28th by Zoom. And some of you living, I don't think any of you live enough close enough to Toronto to come to dinner, but we will. Yes, George, you would, quite possibly, if you're interested. We will be having a dinner afterwards in a restaurant together with the 48 Japanese visitors who are coming. So Adam is working on, will be working on publicizing it. You explain,
So
please,
there's,
what it's
on
about.
the 28th, there's going to be a delegation of peace activists from Japan, about 48 of them coming over to Toronto. They will have been in New York before that. So on the afternoon of the 28th, in the morning, they'll be at York University for an event that one of Meta's colleagues is hosting on disarmament in Asia. But in the afternoon, they'll be at Toronto City Hall for an event. It's not dissimilar to a conference, but kind of more engaging, around stopping nuclear and radiation contamination. So the focus on environmental, all different avenues around that. And one of the interesting things about this is, in addition to it being at City Halls, there's going to be the option to have people network in via a video conference link. So not just will it have, there's room up to 138 people in Toronto City Hall in this room to attend, but there's also kind of potential for an infinite number of people to attend via a video and web conference link. And then in the evening, they'll be going to dinner at Free Times Cafe, which is near Kensington Market, near the University of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the end goal is to establish a new network called Stop Nuclear Contamination. There is some information on the Project Save the World website under the Global Projects header.
Yes, let me add about that, because all of you should be aware of our website. Not only does Peace Magazine have a website with an archive of all the materials that we've produced over the last 37 years. It's called peacemagazine.org. It's one word. But that you can find all kinds of material from Peace Magazine's print publication. But in addition, we have lately started something called Project Save the World, which is broader than only peace issues, or God knows we need plenty of things about peace and disarmament issues, but it includes things like global warming, famine, pandemics, major reactor explosions, or radiation exposure, and cyber attacks, that kind of thing. And we have a website, and so please check it out. It's called tosavetheworld.ca. I should type it in for you. And on that website, we're giving away to not organizations, but if there's a campaign that is global in scope to do a specific kind of thing, like plant 1 trillion trees or cut back emissions 100% or whatever, we give you a website, a page on our website, special page in a category that we call global projects. So on this page, tosavetheworld.ca, look for something called global projects. And then there are about 8 or 10 so far, and I expect we'll have more global campaigns. And you can click on any one of them. And the one that I'm suggesting now is click on the one that's called Stop Nuclear Contamination, because that's going to be the page for people working on their concern about exposure to radioactive contamination around the world, whether it's from nuclear weapons or nuclear power or mining or waste storage or any of these other things. All of these concerns where people, the environment or personal health could be affected by radiation exposure. People concerned about that can share. So we're going to be, on the 28th of April, we'll be forming a new global network of organizations that are concerned about stopping radioactive contamination. And there's a place there where you can have discussion. So you can enter your comments, or if you've got an article that's relevant, you can post it there, and you can argue with each other. It's like a listserv if you want. So get used to going there, checking it, and check the other things on that whole website, because you'll find there's a great deal there that's worth sharing or adding your thoughts to. Hope everybody's willing to let me take little clips from what you've said and put it together. And then we'll put it online, and we'll put it on Facebook, and we'll put it on YouTube, and we'll make this something that people can share. And then next month, we'll come back again and do it on the last Sunday of every month. So, okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right. Terrific. Thank you very much, and blessings to all of you. See you again soon. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
This conversation is one of the weekly series Talk About Saving the World, produced by Peace Magazine and Project Save the World. Please visit our website at tosavetheworld.ca, where you can sign the Platform for Survival, a list of 25 public policy proposals that, if enacted, would greatly reduce the risk of 6 global threats to humankind. Come back next week for another discussion of a serious global issue.